The handcuffs didn't just click. They screamed. That sound, cold steel ratcheting against bone with a sickening, irreversible finality, detonated through the sterile military interrogation room like a bomb blast. 5 years of marriage evaporated in that single metallic shriek. Every lonely night spent staring at a silent phone, every tear shed into a cold pillow, every whispered prayer to a God who seemed to have abandoned me, all of it vaporized under the harsh fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry hornets, stripping away the last pathetic delusions I'd been so desperate to cling to. And there he stood. Ethan Carter. My husband. The man to whom I'd sacrificed my entire youth, every ounce of my devotion, every scrap of my dignity. He wore his crisp Army Special Forces uniform as if it were royal armor, the silver oak leaf insignia on his shoulders glinting under the lights like twin executioner's blades. This was the man who'd once cupped my face in his hands inside a tiny base chapel and sworn before God to love and protect me forever. That same man now looked at me with an expression reserved for something foul stuck to the bottom of his polished boot. Ethan. My voice came out strangled, barely human, a ragged whisper clawing its way out of a closing throat. What are you doing? He didn't blink. His gaze was an empty void where a soul should have been. The warm, gentle soldier I'd married, the man with the easy laugh and kind eyes who'd once stayed up all night with me when I was sick, who'd written me handwritten letters from every deployment, had been completely erased. In his place stood a cold, calculating predator who stared straight through me as if I were already dead and buried. I warned you, Clara. His voice was flat. Surgical. Each syllable a perfectly aimed scalpel. I told you not to meddle in my life. I told you not to disrupt my future. You refused to listen. Now you face the consequences. His future. Those two words hung in the frigid air like a guillotine blade. In that instant, everything crystallized with horrifying clarity. This wasn't about mistakes I'd made. This wasn't about me being a bad wife or disrupting his life. This was about his ambition, his greed, his ravenous hunger to claw up the military ladder by any means necessary, even if it meant destroying the woman who loved him most. I lunged forward, the cuffs grinding against my wrist bones, the pain sharp and clarifying. I'm your wife. We've been married for 5 years. The military police officers yanked me back hard, their grips like iron vices on my arms. Ethan straightened his uniform, adjusted his collar with maddening calm, and walked out of that room without a single backward glance. The door clicked shut behind him. That smaller click was somehow worse than the handcuffs. Quieter. More final. More absolute. I stood there, shaking, my legs threatening to buckle beneath me, and for the first time in my adult life, I truly understood what it meant to have your heart physically ache. Not metaphorically. Physically. A crushing, burning sensation in my chest that made it hard to breathe. 3 days earlier. That's where the illusion had cracked wide open and shown me the rot festering underneath. I'd driven to the Fort Bragg military base housing complex with my heart wedged in my throat, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, desperate to salvage whatever scraps remained of our marriage. For nearly 2 years, Ethan had been transforming before my eyes, morphing from a loving husband into a cold, distant stranger. He rarely came home anymore. He ignored my calls and texts for days on end. When I did manage to reach him, he always brushed me off with the same tired excuses: top secret missions, rigorous training exercises, classified operations. And I, the dutiful military wife, swallowed every single lie like it was gospel. I'd spent 5 years being the perfect, obedient military spouse. I cleaned our empty house alone, scrubbing floors that no one walked on, dusting furniture that no one used. I fixed every broken appliance by myself, watching YouTube tutorials at 2 in the morning with a wrench in my hand and tears streaming down my face. I ate most meals in silence at a table set for 2, the empty chair across from me like a monument to my loneliness. I waited up night after night, staring at the ceiling, listening for a key in the lock that never turned. I endured judgmental glances from other base wives, the ones who whispered behind my back about that Bennett woman whose husband is never home. I swallowed loneliness so thick and bitter it gnawed at my soul, all because I loved him and believed in the vows we'd spoken in front of our family and friends. But what I saw that afternoon in the manicured courtyard of the officers' housing unit broke every ounce of trust one had left. Shattered it. Ground it into dust. Ethan was standing there, his arm wrapped tightly around a young woman with long chestnut hair cascading over her shoulders and delicate, porcelain features. She was laughing, her head thrown back, her fingers tracing the insignia on his uniformed shoulder like she owned him. Like she'd paid for him. The way he looked at her, soft, warm, utterly devoted, I hadn't seen that look directed at me in years. Maybe I'd never seen it. Maybe I'd imagined it all along, fabricated a version of my husband that never truly existed. The moment Ethan spotted me frozen by the gate, his entire demeanor shifted. Panic flashed across his face like a crack of lightning, there and gone in an instant, quickly replaced by irritation and impatience. He roughly pushed the woman away, his jaw tightening as he stormed over to me with no trace of guilt or remorse in his stride. "What are you doing here, Clara?" His words were sharp, accusatory, as if I was the one in the wrong. As if catching my husband with another woman was some kind of social faux pas I should be embarrassed about. "You shouldn't be on base unannounced. You're causing a scene." My throat felt like it was lined with sandpaper, burning and tight, my hands trembling so hard I had to clench them into fists at my sides. "Who is she, Ethan?" He didn't hesitate. The lie slid off his tongue smooth as silk, practiced and polished like he'd rehearsed it 100 times in front of a mirror. "She's a fellow officer's spouse. She needed help with a base housing issue. You're being ridiculous and insecure right now. This is exactly why I can't bring you around the other officers." I didn't argue. Didn't scream. Didn't cause the dramatic, tearful scene he was clearly expecting. I knew better than to create a spectacle on a military base. It would damage his reputation, give him more ammunition to blame me, and accomplish absolutely nothing. I simply turned and walked away, my heart cracking into 1,000 pieces with every step I took. I'd always been the quiet, respectful wife, careful never to embarrass him, never to jeopardize his military standing. I'd given him every ounce of grace I possessed, and he'd thrown it all back in my face like it was worthless. I went home that night and waited. I sat on the edge of our bed in the dark, still wearing my shoes, staring at the wall. The house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming 2 rooms away. I waited for an apology that never came. For an explanation that never arrived. For even a single text message acknowledging my pain, my existence, my humanity. Ethan never came home. He never called. He never sent a single message. The silence was absolute, total, complete, a living thing that pressed down on me from all sides. Instead, the next morning at dawn, 2 uniformed military police officers showed up at my front door and kicked it in. I was standing in my faded morning bathrobe, barefoot on the cold tile, still half hoping Ethan might walk through the door with flowers and an apology. Instead, I got an official court summons and arrest warrant shoved in my face before I'd even had my coffee. "Clara Bennett, you are being detained on charges of military marriage disruption and persistent harassment of active-duty military officer Ethan Carter." The lead officer's voice was mechanical, reciting from a script. "You have repeatedly interfered with his official duties and disrupted his lawful family household. You are hereby placed in military custody pending a formal court-martial hearing." I stood in my doorway, barefoot, bathrobe hanging open, completely stunned. My brain simply refused to process the words I was hearing. This was impossible. This was absurd. I was Ethan Carter's legal wife. I was his family. How could I be charged with disrupting his family life? "You have the wrong person," I insisted, my voice rising with panic and disbelief. "I'm his wife. We've been married for 5 years. I have a marriage license to prove it. I have wedding photos. I have joint tax returns." The lead officer's face remained completely impassive, carved from granite, no flicker of sympathy or confusion anywhere in his expression. Official military records show Officer Ethan Carter finalized a full divorce 3 years ago. He is currently lawfully married to Ms. Lila Harrison, the daughter of Fort Bragg's commanding general. You have no legal claim to him or his household. The world tilted violently beneath my feet. I felt my knees buckle, black spots dancing across my vision, the hallway spinning around me. A divorce? 3 years ago. I had never signed a single divorce document in my life. I had never appeared in any court hearing. I had never agreed to end our marriage in any capacity whatsoever. That's a lie. I screamed, tears flooding my eyes as I stumbled backward into the house. I never signed divorce papers. We are still married. This is fake. This is fraud. That's when Ethan stepped into my doorway. He moved with the cold, authoritative posture of a powerful military officer putting a troublesome civilian in her place. He looked down at me like I was a hysterical stranger, a crazy woman off the street, not the wife who'd loved and supported him for half a decade. Not the woman who'd sacrificed her career, her dreams, her entire youth to stand by his side. Enough, Clara. His voice was ice. Absolute zero. Stop making a fool of yourself. You refused to accept our divorce peacefully, so you left me no choice but to involve the military court. This is your own fault for clinging to a marriage that ended years ago. Let go. Move on. Get help. I stared up at him, broken and confused, tears streaming down my face, unable to recognize the cruel, ambitious monster standing in front of me. This wasn't the man I'd married. This wasn't the young lieutenant with the boyish smile and earnest eyes who'd promised to cherish me forever. This was something else entirely. Something cold and reptilian and utterly unrecognizable. How could you do this to me? I whispered, my voice cracking. After everything I've done for you? After every lonely night I spent waiting for you? After every sacrifice I made? After every time I stood by you when anyone else would have walked away? He didn't answer my question. He didn't even acknowledge it. He simply nodded at the officers, turned on his heel, and walked away, leaving me alone to be arrested and dragged from the home I'd built for us with my own 2 hands. The neighbors were watching from their windows. I could see curtains twitching, faces peering out. The humiliation was absolute, complete, total. For 7 long, torturous days, I sat locked in a tiny, barren military holding cell. The walls were cold gray concrete that seemed to absorb all warmth and light. The only illumination came from a dim, flickering overhead bulb that buzzed constantly, drilling into my skull. The only company I had was my own racing, broken thoughts, circling endlessly like vultures over a carcass. I replayed every moment of our relationship, searching for the fracture point where love had curdled into betrayal. Where the man I'd married had transformed into a ruthless liar and manipulator. I remembered our first meeting at a local military charity gala 5 years prior. He was a young, charming lieutenant with a bright smile and earnest eyes, telling me he dreamed of rising through the military ranks honorably and building a quiet, happy family. I remembered the way he'd listened to me talk about my own dreams, a small marketing firm, a house with a garden, children laughing in the backyard. He'd nodded along, his eyes soft, and told me he wanted the same things. I remembered our small, intimate wedding in the base chapel, no grand celebration, just a few close friends and family. I remembered his vows, spoken softly and sincerely, promising to cherish me, protect me, and stay faithful to me for the rest of his life. I remembered the way he'd looked at me then, like I was the most precious thing in his world. My parents had warned me back then. They'd sat me down in our family kitchen and told me, with love and worry in their eyes, that military men were often changed by power and ambition. They said long deployments and military hierarchy could twist a person's character, turn them into someone unrecognizable. They'd begged me not to marry him, worried I would spend my life lonely and unappreciated, a military widow in everything but name. But I'd been young and naive, blinded by love, absolutely certain that our bond was stronger than any career or ambition could ever be. I was wrong. So terribly, catastrophically wrong. On the 8th day, I was escorted out of the cell and brought to the official military courtroom. The room was massive, formal, and intimidating as hell, high ceilings, dark wood paneling, rows of uniformed military officials sitting in judgment. The judge's bench loomed above everything like a throne. Every eye in the room locked onto me as I stood alone in the defendant's dock, judging and pitying, assuming I was a desperate, delusional woman obsessed with a married soldier who wanted nothing to do with me. Ethan sat confidently at the plaintiff's table, dressed in his full ceremonial uniform, medals polished to a blinding shine, posture perfect. Beside him sat Lila Harrison, the general's daughter, dressed in a soft white sundress that practically screamed innocence and purity. Her makeup was flawless, her expression gentle and sorrowful, playing the role of the wronged, loving wife so perfectly it made me want to vomit. The military prosecutor stood and began his formal statement, his voice loud and echoing through the silent courtroom like the voice of God. Your Honor, the defendant, Clara Bennett, has continuously harassed and stalked active duty officer Ethan Carter for multiple years. Despite the legal dissolution of his previous marriage and his current lawful marriage to Lila Carter, the defendant has refused to cease contact, has invaded military property, and has actively disrupted the officer's household and military career. We present witness statements, text message records, and base surveillance footage as evidence of her persistent misconduct. Every word felt like a blade slicing through my chest. I could not let these lies stand. I could not let him ruin my life completely just to further his military career. That is all false. I shouted, my voice ringing clear through the room despite my terror. I am Ethan Carter's legal and only wife. We were married 5 years ago, and we never divorced. I have the documents to prove it. The presiding military judge rapped his gavel firmly, the sound cracking through the room like a gunshot. Defendant, you will speak only when called upon. If you claim legal marriage to the plaintiff, present your official documentation immediately. Relief surged through me, finally, a chance to prove the truth. I'd kept our original marriage license tucked safely in my pocket every single day since my arrest, terrified it would be taken from me, that it would mysteriously disappear like everything else in this nightmare. I pulled the crumpled red-stamped official document out and held it up for the court to see, my hands shaking with hope and desperation. This is our state-issued marriage license, Your Honor. It is legally binding and was never revoked. We are still married. A court officer took the document and passed it to the judge, who examined it carefully, his brows furrowing in clear confusion. He turned his gaze directly to Ethan, waiting for an explanation. Ethan stood slowly, his expression calm and unwavering, a master manipulator performing for a captive audience. Your Honor, this document is authentic, but outdated. The defendant and I did marry 5 years ago, but we finalized a mutual no-contest divorce 3 years prior. She signed all official paperwork and agreed to full dissolution. I have the legal divorce decree to prove it. I froze in absolute horror. I never signed anything. I never agreed to a divorce. That is a lie. That document is forged. Before I could continue arguing, Ethan pulled a thick official document from his legal folder and handed it to the court clerk with the smooth confidence of a man who knew he held all the cards. This is the official divorce agreement, bearing Clara Bennett's legal signature and verified fingerprint. All military and state records were updated accordingly at the time of filing. The entire courtroom waited in tense, suffocating silence as the judge reviewed the document closely. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst from my chest and splatter across the defendant's table. I knew every line of that paper was fake. I knew my signature had been forged, my identity stolen, my entire marriage erased through fraud and corruption. Defendant, the judge said firmly, holding up the paper for me to see, this document bears your signature and fingerprint. Do you deny this is your handwriting and mark? I deny it completely. I cried out, hot, desperate tears streaming down my face. I have never seen this paper before today. That signature is forged. This is all a setup. He's trying to erase me so he can marry the general's daughter. Instead of arguing further, Ethan calmly pulled out a second stack of evidence, sliding it across the table for the court to view with theatrical solemnity. If the court requires further proof of the defendant's unstable character and marital misconduct, I submit these photos. These images prove the defendant engaged in extramarital affairs 3 years ago, which is the true reason for our marital dissolution. She abandoned our marriage first, long before I moved on with Lila. The photos projected onto the large courtroom screen stole every breath from my lungs. The images were blurry, taken from a distance, but the woman in the photos was undeniably me. Standing next to me was a man with his back fully turned to the camera, his face completely unrecognizable. There was no proof of any affair, no intimate contact, nothing but two people standing in the same public space. But the implication was nuclear, enough to paint me as a cheating, unfaithful wife in front of the entire military court. These photos are altered. I screamed, my voice breaking with rage and grief. They are taken out of context. This is slander. Ethan, how dare you lie about me like this? How dare you destroy my reputation for your own gain? Ethan sighed deeply, feigning sorrow and exhaustion, shaking his head slowly like a long-suffering husband who'd endured years of unbearable betrayal. I tried to protect your dignity, Clara. I tried to keep your infidelity private to spare you public shame. But you continue to harass me and disrupt my new family, leaving me no choice but to present the truth in open court. I take no pleasure in this. Lila chose that exact moment to burst into quiet, delicate tears, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, her voice soft and trembling for the entire court to hear. Clara, I know you're hurting, and I understand your pain, I truly do. But Ethan and I are in love, real, genuine love. Your marriage ended years ago. Please stop clinging to the past and let us be happy. I don't want to hate you. I want to forgive you. Her fake tenderness, her performative kindness, her calculated innocence pushed me to the absolute brink of madness. She was the homewrecker. She was the other woman. She was the reason my marriage was being destroyed, yet she stood there playing the victim while I stood accused of every crime under the sun. Stop lying. I shouted, my voice echoing through the courtroom. You knew he was married. You helped him lie. You helped him cheat. You helped him ruin my life. The judge slammed his gavel down so hard I thought the bench might crack. Defendant. One more outburst and you will be charged with contempt of court. Maintain silence immediately or I will have you removed. I bit my lip until I tasted blood, copper flooding my mouth, forcing myself to calm down through pure, agonizing willpower. I could not lose control. I could not give them more reason to lock me away forever. I needed proof. I needed justice. I needed a miracle. Your Honor, I said, my voice shaky but somehow steady, I formally request a professional forensic handwriting and fingerprint analysis on the alleged divorce agreement. I guarantee that signature and fingerprint are not mine. I have never signed anything related to a divorce in my entire life. The judge nodded, granting my request without hesitation. The court will order official forensic verification. We will recess for 30 minutes pending results. I was led back to the holding room alone, left with my chaotic, racing thoughts. In that small, windowless space, I began piecing together the puzzle, connecting dots I'd been too blind to see for years. 2.5 years ago, Ethan had insisted I take a 3-month professional development course in a city 3 hours away from base. He'd been so encouraging, so supportive, practically pushing me out the door. He told me it would help my career, that I deserved to invest in myself, that he'd take care of everything at home while I was gone. He'd been so convincing, so earnest, so seemingly loving. I'd gone, excited to better myself, never suspecting he was using my absence to plot the complete erasure of our marriage. While I was away studying, working hard to improve our future together, he was forging documents, bribing court staff, and building a fake new life with the general's daughter, all to climb the military ranks faster. While I sat in evening classes taking notes on marketing strategy, he was in lawyers' offices signing papers that would erase my existence from his life. I'd noticed small changes after I returned home. He was colder, more distant, secretive with his phone, always leaving the room to take calls. I'd found flirty text messages on his phone once, messages from a woman calling him baby, telling him she missed him, describing things she wanted to do to him. When I'd confronted him, he'd laughed it off as coded military training jargon. Coded jargon. And I'd believed him. I'd actually believed him. I'd been so stupid. So trusting. So blindly loyal to a man who'd spent every waking moment plotting my destruction. 30 minutes later, I was escorted back into the courtroom, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. The forensic analyst, a stern woman in a lab coat, stood and delivered her official findings in a clear, professional tone that cut through the silence. After full handwriting comparison and fingerprint verification, the signature and fingerprint on the submitted divorce document do not match the defendant's official records. The document is confirmed forged and legally invalid. A wave of pure, electric relief crashed over me. The lie was exposed. The fake divorce was proven fraudulent. I finally had proof of my innocence. I turned to look at Ethan, expecting to see panic, fear, the collapse of his entire scheme. But Ethan's face remained completely calm. No shock. No panic. No fear. He simply smiled faintly, a cold, confident smirk that sent a fresh wave of ice-cold terror flooding through my chest. He had another card to play. Another lie waiting to destroy me. He rose smoothly, unbothered, like the forgery revelation was a minor inconvenience he'd anticipated all along. Your Honor, while I acknowledge the irregularity of the divorce paperwork, which I was clearly not aware of until this moment, there is critical evidence the court has not yet reviewed. He pulled a sealed official document from his folder, handling it like a holy relic. This is a certified DNA paternity report dated 3 years prior. It confirms that during our legal marriage, the defendant gave birth to a child whose biological father is not myself. She concealed an illegitimate child and abandoned the infant after birth, committing marital fraud and parental abandonment. The courtroom exploded. Gasps and shocked murmurs rippled through the room like a shockwave. Every eye locked onto me with judgment and disgust. Whispers buzzed like angry hornets. Abandoned her baby, illegitimate child, what kind of monster? My mind went completely blank, numb with utter confusion and terror. A child? I had never given birth to a child in my life. I had never been pregnant. I had never even suspected I might be pregnant. This was impossible. This was another vicious, elaborate lie. 3 years ago, during your out-of-town training program, Ethan continued smoothly, his voice dripping with false sorrow, you became pregnant with another man's child. You secretly delivered the baby and abandoned it to cover your infidelity. I have spent years hiding this shameful secret to protect your reputation, but your endless harassment and refusal to move on has left me no choice but to reveal the truth to this court. I stared at him in stunned, horrified disbelief, my mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. I never had a child. I was never pregnant. This report is fake. You're lying again. The DNA report is state-certified and legally binding, Ethan replied coldly, his voice dripping with smug confidence. The child exists, and you are its biological mother. The court may order a second test if they wish, but the results will not change. Science doesn't lie. The judge stared down at me with stern disappointment hardening his features. Given the existing verified evidence and certified DNA report, the court finds probable cause to detain the defendant indefinitely pending further investigation and retrial. You will remain in military custody until all facts are confirmed. No. No. I struggled against the officers grabbing my arms, thrashing with desperate strength. This is injustice. I'm innocent. He's lying to ruin me. He's destroying my life so he can marry the general's daughter. As the officers pulled me toward the exit, Ethan walked slowly to my side, leaning down close, his breath hot against my ear. His whisper was cold, triumphant, meant only for me. You can't win against me, Clara. Lila's father controls every promotion, every rank, every opportunity on this entire base. You were always just a barrier to my career. Nothing more. A barrier I'm finally removing for good. Here's my advice, stay quiet and plead guilty, and I'll make sure your sentence is short. Fight me, and you'll spend decades rotting in military prison. Your choice. I stared into his cold, dead, shark-like eyes, finally seeing the truth with perfect, horrifying clarity. I hadn't lost my marriage by accident. I hadn't been the victim of circumstance or misunderstanding. I'd been targeted, manipulated, and systematically destroyed from the very start, all for a man's greedy, insatiable ambition. Back in solitary confinement hours later, I curled into a ball on the freezing concrete floor, every last flicker of hope extinguished. The cell was dark, cold, suffocating. I had no family left to turn to. My parents were gone, killed in a car accident 3 years ago. I had no friends powerful enough to fight military corruption. I had no way to prove my innocence against a decorated special forces officer and a general's daughter. I was alone, utterly and completely alone. I thought I had lost everything. I thought all hope was gone forever. I thought I would die in this cold gray box, my name forever stained, my son, if he even existed, lost to me for eternity. Late that evening, as the dim overhead bulb flickered and buzzed, the cell door creaked open. A tall man in a sharp navy suit stepped inside. He was around 35 years old, with sharp, intelligent features, wire-rimmed glasses that caught the dim light, and a quiet, authoritative presence that filled the tiny cell. He carried no files, no paperwork, just a calm, steady gaze that studied me carefully, like he was assessing a wounded animal. "I'm Owen Reed," he said softly, closing the cell door behind him with a gentle click. "I served alongside Ethan for years in special forces. We trained together, deployed together, trusted each other with our lives. I've come to tell you the truth about everything that's happened to you." I pressed myself against the cold concrete wall, my body rigid with exhaustion and suspicion. After everything Ethan had done, I couldn't trust anyone connected to his world. "What do you want from me? Did he send you to finish me off?" Owen sat down on the cold metal bench across from me, his expression serious and heavy with remorse. He didn't try to get closer, didn't invade my space, just sat there with his hands visible, open, non-threatening. "First, I need you to hear me clearly. Every word Ethan said in court today is a lie, except one. You did have a child 3 years ago. And you don't remember it because he drugged you to erase your memory of the entire event." My head spun violently, nausea rolling through my stomach in waves. "That's impossible. I would remember giving birth. I would remember being pregnant. You can't just forget something like that." "Ethan has been manipulating you for years," Owen explained quietly, his voice heavy with guilt and something that sounded like shame. "During your 3-month out-of-town training program, every time you came home to visit, he secretly slipped memory-altering medication into your daily vitamins. A military-grade compound he had access to through covert operations channels. He planned every detail meticulously to ruin your life, climb the ranks, and marry Lila Harrison. The child is real, Clara. I swear on my life. And I am the biological father." I froze completely. Every muscle in my body locked up. My lungs stopped working. The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. "What did you just say?" 3 years ago, Owen continued, his voice breaking with genuine, raw regret, Ethan orchestrated the entire night. He got me completely intoxicated at a base celebration, drugged my drink, I suspect, though I can't prove it. He tricked me into a hotel room, told me it was my room, told me to sleep it off. Then he brought you there while you were heavily medicated, barely conscious. He did it to trap me, to ensure I would stay silent about his corruption and his illegal military dealings. He used us both as pawns for his career advancement. I couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in. He made us. Yes. Owen's voice was barely a whisper. After you became pregnant, he panicked. He couldn't risk the scandal ruining his chance to marry the general's daughter. When you gave birth to your son, our son, he took the baby from you while you were still sedated from delivery. He arranged for a private off-base adoption through shady channels. Then he increased your medication dosage to wipe every trace of the pregnancy and birth from your memory. He erased your child from your mind. He erased your body's history. He erased your entire truth. All to protect his reputation and his precious career path. Tears poured down my face as I absorbed the horrific truth. I had a son. A baby boy I'd carried inside my body for 9 months and pushed into this world. A child I'd never gotten to hold, never gotten to name, never gotten to love. All because of Ethan's greed and cruelty. Where is he? I whispered, my voice raw and broken, barely audible. Where is my baby? Owen pulled a small photograph from his wallet and handed it to me with trembling fingers. The second I saw the little boy's face, my heart shattered and mended and shattered again all at once. He had my dark eyes, my soft facial features, my nose, my chin. A faint smile that mirrored my own in childhood photos. He was 3 years old, perfect and beautiful, my flesh and blood, my son. His name is Leo, Owen said gently, his own voice thick with emotion. I've been secretly funding his care for 3 years. Checking on him every week. Protecting him from Ethan's reach. Ethan thinks the child was sent out of state permanently, adopted by strangers who would never be found. But I've kept him safe this entire time. I've spent 3 years living with crushing guilt, knowing I was part of Ethan's scheme, knowing you were suffering in complete ignorance, knowing there was a little boy who deserved his mother. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, clutching the photograph to my chest like it was the last lifeline in a stormy sea. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because I was a coward, Owen said frankly, his eyes glistening behind his glasses. And because I've been gathering evidence. I've spent 3 years watching Ethan lie, cheat, steal, and destroy your life while he climbs the military ranks with zero accountability. I couldn't come forward without proof, it would have been my word against his, and he had the general's protection. But I've collected everything now. I have recordings of Ethan admitting to forging documents. Bank records of bribes he paid to military officials. Voice messages where he discusses drugging you. I have everything we need to take him down completely. Hope, faint and fragile but stubbornly unbroken, flickered back to life in my chest after what felt like years of darkness. Help me, I whispered, looking up at Owen with desperate, burning determination. Help me clear my name. Help me get my son back. Help me make Ethan pay for everything he's done to us. Owen nodded firmly, his gaze steady and resolute, a soldier accepting a mission. I promise you, Clara. I'm going to fix every single thing he broke. He's going to lose his rank, his reputation, his career, and every last thing he's worked for. He's going to answer for every lie, every crime, and every tear he's made you shed. I swear it. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. For the first time since Ethan turned cruel and cold, I had a reason to fight, a reason to hope, a reason to believe that the truth would finally come out. 3 days later, the second military court-martial began, and this time, I was ready. Owen had hired the most powerful military defense attorney in the state, Attorney Hale, a sharp, experienced lawyer who specialized in military fraud and court corruption cases, with a perfect winning record spanning over 20 years. Hale was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. The moment she reviewed our evidence, she smiled like a shark scenting blood in the water. We have him cornered, she assured me before the hearing began, her voice crisp and confident. Every piece of evidence lines up perfectly. Ethan's entire house of cards is about to crumble into dust, and I'm going to enjoy every second of watching it fall. I sat at the defense table this time, calm and steady, no longer the hysterical, broken woman who'd been dragged out of this same courtroom days earlier. I wore a simple black dress, my hair pulled back, my posture straight. I watched Ethan take his place across the room, still arrogant, still confident, still convinced his power and connections would protect him from any consequence. He glanced at me with that cold smirk, so sure of his victory. The prosecutor began his opening statement once again, repeating all the false accusations: harassment, infidelity, child abandonment, marital disruption. But this time, we didn't wait for the lies to pile up. Attorney Hale stood immediately, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a blade through silk. Your Honor, the defense presents verified audio recordings of Ethan Carter personally admitting to forging divorce documentation, bribing forensic staff to falsify reports, and manufacturing fake DNA evidence against the defendant. We also submit official bank transaction records proving Ethan paid over $40,000 in illegal bribes to military court officials to alter public records and frame an innocent woman for crimes she never committed. The entire courtroom erupted in absolute chaos. Gasps and shocked murmurs filled the room as the recordings played over the court speakers, Ethan's cold, arrogant voice echoing through the chamber as he casually discussed forging documents, erasing records, and destroying my life like he was ordering lunch at a restaurant. "This is getting expensive," his voice crackled through the speakers, tinny but unmistakable. "But worth every penny. Once Clara's out of the picture permanently, Lila and I can finally move forward. The general's already promised me the battalion command. Just make sure those documents hold up under scrutiny." Another recording played. "The DNA test? I don't care what it actually says. Make it say what I need it to say. She'll never be able to fight it. She doesn't have the resources or the connections. By the time anyone figures out the truth, I'll be untouchable." Ethan's face drained completely of color, his confident composure shattering in an instant. He shot up from his seat, veins bulging in his neck, his hands slamming against the table. "These recordings are fake. They're edited fabrications. This is a setup to ruin my career. She's conspiring with disgruntled former colleagues to destroy me." The recordings have been forensically verified by 3 independent laboratories as completely unaltered and authentic, Attorney Hale replied coolly, completely unfazed by his outburst. "We also have a key witness prepared to testify under oath about every illegal action Ethan Carter has committed over the past 3 years. The defense calls Captain Owen Reed to the stand." Owen walked calmly to the witness stand, his footsteps echoing in the hushed courtroom. He placed his hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and began testifying with unshakable, methodical precision. He detailed every step of Ethan's elaborate scheme, drugging my vitamins to manipulate my memory, orchestrating the non-consensual encounter that produced Leo, forging legal documents to erase our marriage, bribing forensic analysts to falsify DNA reports, and systematically plotting his rise through military power by destroying my entire life. "Ethan Carter has been corrupt for years," Owen testified firmly, his voice steady and clear, carrying to every corner of the silent room. "He has manipulated military records, bribed officials, and used innocent people as disposable pawns for his personal gain. He targeted Clara specifically because she was a loyal, trusting spouse who would never suspect his treachery. He erased her child, her marriage, and her reputation simply to climb the military social ladder and secure his marriage to the general's daughter." Ethan seethed with barely contained rage, his face purple with fury and panic. "You're lying. You've always been jealous of my rank and success. This is personal retaliation because I outperformed you on every deployment, every evaluation, every promotion board." Owen simply pulled a small USB drive from his pocket and held it up for the court to see. "I have 3 years of saved communications, video evidence, and additional witness statements from 7 other military personnel who will confirm every word I've said. I have nothing to gain from this testimony. I am only here to speak the truth and right a terrible wrong that I was forced to participate in." Before the judge could rule on the mountain of new evidence, the massive courtroom doors swung open with a thunderous crash that made everyone in the room jump. A tall, uniformed 4-star military general marched into the room, his medals gleaming under the lights, his face carved from granite. Behind him followed a team of high-ranking military investigators and armed security officers. The entire court fell dead silent in an instant, the air sucked out of the room as if by a vacuum. General Harrison, Lila's father, the most powerful commanding officer on the entire base, scanned the room with a cold, authoritative gaze that made seasoned officers shrink in their seats. Every judge, every officer, every court member rose to their feet in immediate respect. Ethan's face lit up with desperate, pathetic hope. His savior. His future father-in-law. The man whose protection he'd been counting on. He straightened his uniform, squared his shoulders, and prepared to be defended and exonerated. But General Harrison's gaze locked directly on Ethan, sharp and unforgiving as a guillotine blade. "I have conducted a full, independent investigation into Ethan Carter's military record, personal conduct, and legal dealings over the past 72 hours. I have confirmed beyond any shadow of doubt that Ethan Carter forged legal documents, committed marital fraud, bribed military staff, manipulated official records, drugged an innocent civilian, and deceived my daughter for the sole purpose of advancing his military career. Every last drop of color drained from Ethan's face. He stumbled backward, grasping at the table for support, his legs visibly shaking. No. General, please. I can explain everything. This is all a misunderstanding. Your daughter and I, we love each other. We were going to build a life together. Furthermore, General Harrison continued, his voice like thunder rolling through the courtroom, Ethan Carter and my daughter Lila Harrison were never legally married. Their marriage certificate is a fraudulent document filed without official military or state approval. My family will not be associated with a corrupt, dishonest officer for one more second. I have already submitted full reports to the Military Review Board recommending immediate dishonorable discharge and full criminal prosecution for every felony committed. The courtroom exploded in shocked disbelief. Ethan's entire carefully constructed world crumbled in a single, devastating moment. His power, his rank, his reputation, his fake marriage, his carefully planned future, all of it vanished like smoke in a hurricane. No. No. General Harrison, please. Please. Ethan screamed, his voice cracking. I can explain everything. I can fix this. Lila, tell him. Tell him we love each other. Tell him this is all a misunderstanding. Lila wouldn't meet his eyes. She sat frozen in her seat, her performance of the wronged wife finally shattered, her face pale and terrified as she realized her own complicity was about to be exposed to the world. Secure the defendant immediately, the judge ordered sharply, slamming his gavel down with finality. Ethan Carter, you are hereby arrested on multiple felony charges including document forgery, official corruption, bribery, fraud, illegal administration of controlled substances, and wrongful prosecution. You will be detained pending a full military criminal trial. Armed officers rushed forward, slamming handcuffs onto Ethan as he struggled and screamed, his arrogant confidence replaced with pure, animal panic. The man who'd spent years destroying my life, who'd thought his power and rank made him untouchable, was finally dragged toward the same cold cell that had held me. Tears streamed down my face, but they were no longer tears of pain and despair. They were tears of relief, of freedom, of long overdue justice. After years of loneliness, betrayal, and wrongful suffering, the truth had finally won. After the court adjourned, Owen walked to my side, his expression soft and gentle for the first time since I'd met him. The tension had melted from his shoulders, and he looked younger somehow, as if a great weight had been lifted from him too. Come with me, Clara. There's someone who's been waiting to meet his mom for 3 very long years. I followed him outside the courthouse on shaking legs, my heart so full I thought it might burst. The afternoon sun was bright and warm on my face, the first sunlight I'd felt in what seemed like forever. Parked at the curb was a black SUV with tinted windows. Owen opened the back door slowly, almost reverently, and a small, beautiful little boy with big dark eyes and a soft, shy smile peered out at me from his car seat. He tilted his head, studying my face with the intense curiosity only a child possesses, his little brow furrowing as if he was trying to solve a puzzle. Then he whispered in a tiny, sweet voice that cracked my heart completely open and healed it in the same instant, "Mommy? Are you my mommy?" I dropped to my knees right there on the sidewalk, pulling my baby boy into my arms, holding him tightly against my chest after 3 years of stolen time. I buried my face in his soft dark hair, sobbing with pure, uncomplicated joy, pressing endless kisses to his forehead, his cheeks, his tiny hands, his little fingers that wrapped around mine. "I'm here, baby," I whispered over and over, my voice breaking. "Mommy's right here. I'm never leaving you again. Never. I promise. I promise." Leo wrapped his small arms tightly around my neck, clinging to me like he'd known me his whole life. No fear, no hesitation, just pure instinctive love. In that perfect, precious moment, all the pain, all the betrayal, all the years of loneliness vanished completely. I had my son back. I had my truth back. I had my life back. I slid into the passenger seat beside Owen, my little Leo curled securely in my lap, his small fingers tangled loosely in the hem of my sweater as we pulled away from the courthouse parking lot. The weight of years of wrongful accusation, quiet loneliness, and gut-wrenching betrayal finally lifted from my shoulders with every mile we drove away from Fort Bragg. Leo's soft, steady breathing against my chest calmed the frantic beat of my heart, a gentle reminder that I was no longer alone in a world that had spent so long trying to break me. Owen kept his gaze fixed steadily on the highway stretching out before us, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror to check on our little boy. A quiet tenderness settled over his features, a softness around his eyes, a gentleness in the set of his jaw, that I hadn't witnessed during our tense conversations inside the detention center. The silence between us wasn't awkward or strained, but soft and forgiving, filled with the unspoken understanding that we had both been trapped as unwilling pawns in Ethan's ruthless, ambitious scheme for far too long. I still can't bring myself to fully wrap my mind around everything that happened, I murmured quietly, brushing a stray lock of dark hair away from Leo's sleepy forehead. His eyelashes fluttered against his cheeks as he dozed. One wrong choice made out of blind ambition destroyed so many lives all at once. I spent 5 years loving a man who spent every single one of those years plotting how to erase me from his story entirely. Owen let out a slow, weary sigh, one hand resting loosely on the steering wheel as we cruised past stretches of quiet North Carolina woodland dotted with small suburban neighborhoods and winding country roads. Ethan was never satisfied with the life he'd built. When we first enlisted together straight out of high school, we both dreamed of climbing through the military ranks slowly and honorably, building stable, quiet lives with people we loved. Somewhere along the way, power twisted his perspective entirely. He began to see every relationship, every friendship, every person he met as nothing more than a stepping stone to his next promotion. He paused, his jaw tightening as old memories resurfaced. When he realized General Harrison's daughter Lila had taken a quiet interest in him during a base charity gala 3 years ago, he immediately started mapping out every detail of how to discard you without ruining his public reputation. He knew if he simply filed for a standard divorce, rumors would spread quickly across the tight-knit base community, tarnishing his flawless service record and damaging his chances of being placed under the general's direct command. So he built an elaborate fraud instead, one that would paint you as the villain and him as the victim. I nodded slowly, every small, confusing red flag I'd brushed off as simple military stress or deployment exhaustion finally clicking into place like pieces of a puzzle I'd been unable to solve for years. The sudden push for me to attend an out-of-state training program hundreds of miles away. The gradual shift to secretive late-night phone calls taken behind closed doors. The vague excuses for missed dinners and forgotten anniversaries. None of those moments had been random or accidental. Every single strange choice Ethan made had been carefully calculated to separate me from my old life, my memories, and eventually my own child. Leo stirred gently in my arms, his tiny sleepy voice breaking through our somber conversation. "Mommy, are we going to our new house now?" I pressed a soft kiss to the top of his head, my heart swelling with a warmth I'd feared I'd never feel again after my time spent locked inside that cold military detention cell. "We are going back to the apartment I called home before everything went wrong, sweet boy. We'll take all the time we need to fix our lives and build a safe, happy space just for the two of us." Owen's eyes flickered toward me for a split second, a quiet, vulnerable hope lingering behind the lenses of his wire-rimmed glasses before he returned his attention to the road. "You never have to rush any decisions about your future, Clara." I stepped forward to reveal Ethan's crimes not with the expectation of earning your affection or a place in your new family, but simply to right a terrible injustice I was forced to participate in 3 years ago. Whatever path you choose, whether you wish to rebuild independently or allow me to stand beside you as a supportive friend, I'll respect every choice without question. His thoughtful, patient words eased the faint sense of guilt that had settled heavy in my chest ever since I'd learned he was Leo's biological father. For so long, I'd been manipulated, pressured, and forced into painful compromises by Ethan's relentless control. The idea of someone respecting my boundaries, my trauma, and my need for emotional healing felt foreign yet deeply comforting. For once, I wasn't being pushed to choose between two terrible options. I was being granted the precious gift of time to heal at my own pace. 30 minutes later, we pulled into the quiet residential street where my small two-bedroom apartment sat nestled between rows of well-maintained family homes lined with blooming spring azalea bushes and neatly trimmed green lawns. The moment I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, a wave of bittersweet nostalgia washed over me. Every piece of furniture, every framed photograph hanging along the hallway walls, every well-worn blanket draped across the living room sofa held fragments of the 5 years I'd spent waiting faithfully for a husband who'd long since abandoned our marriage in pursuit of power and status. Leo's curious dark eyes scanned every corner of the living room, his small hand clinging tightly to my fingers as he wandered slowly across the wooden floor toward the large bay window overlooking our front yard. "This place feels warm, Mommy. It doesn't feel like the cold rooms Grandpa Owen took me to visit before." I smiled through the tears pricking at the corners of my eyes, squeezing his small hand gently. "That's because this home belongs to us now, baby. No one will ever separate us again. No one will ever lie about who we are. No one will ever try to take you away from me." Owen lingered in the entryway for a few quiet moments, offering to help carry our small handful of personal belongings from the vehicle before politely excusing himself to give Leo and me much-needed private space to settle into our new beginning. He promised to check in the following morning to share updates from Attorney Hale regarding Ethan's ongoing criminal proceedings, leaving his personal phone number scribbled neatly on a small slip of paper pinned to our refrigerator door. Once the door clicked shut behind him, I knelt down and wrapped both arms tightly around my little boy, allowing myself to fully absorb the miracle of our long-awaited reunion. 3 years of stolen motherhood. Countless sleepless nights spent grieving a love that had turned toxic and cruel. Endless hours trapped inside a prison cell, wrongfully accused of unspeakable crimes. All of that suffering finally faded away the second Leo leaned his small head against my shoulder and whispered that he was glad to finally have his mother home. Over the next several days, I slowly fell into a gentle, healing routine with my son. I cleared every framed photograph featuring Ethan from our walls, carefully packing each one away inside a sealed storage box destined for the back of our attic closet. I redecorated our spare bedroom into a bright, playful nursery space for Leo, painting the walls a soft sky blue shade and filling the room with stuffed animals, colorful picture books, and a brand new wooden toddler bed shaped like a little red fire truck. Each small task I completed felt like a quiet act of reclamation, slowly rebuilding the life Ethan had tried so desperately to burn to the ground. I secured a stable remote marketing position with a regional advertising agency based out of Raleigh, a flexible role that allowed me to work from the comfort of our apartment while remaining present for every precious moment of Leo's early childhood. Each weekday morning, I'd sit down at my home office desk once Leo was settled into his morning preschool virtual learning program, balancing professional responsibilities with the endless joy of watching my shy, thoughtful little boy discover the world around him for the very first time with his mother by his side. Owen remained a steady, respectful presence in our lives throughout those initial weeks of healing. He'd stop by 2 or 3 times each week with homemade baked treats for Leo, chocolate chip cookies, banana bread, little hand pies filled with apple cinnamon. He'd take us to local parks and children's museums on weekend afternoons, pushing Leo on the swings while I sat on a nearby bench, feeling the sun on my face. He'd sit quietly beside me on the living room couch as we reviewed legal updates from Attorney Hale regarding Ethan's upcoming criminal trial. He never pushed me to discuss our complicated shared past or pressured me into defining the romantic potential between us, choosing instead to build a foundation of trust, friendship, and mutual respect that allowed my broken heart to mend gradually without fear or obligation. Attorney Hale called me one Tuesday afternoon to deliver the latest developments in Ethan's extensive criminal case. Ethan has been formally dishonorably discharged from active military service, stripped of every rank, pension benefit, and security clearance he spent over a decade earning. General Harrison's Independent Military Review Board has fully validated every piece of evidence we submitted: document forgery, bribery, witness tampering, unlawful drugging. Lila Harrison has accepted a misdemeanor plea deal for her role in assisting Ethan with filing their fraudulent marriage license, receiving 2 years of supervised probation and a permanent ban from all official base events and military-affiliated employment opportunities. My fingers tightened around the telephone receiver. What about the maximum criminal sentence he's facing for all of these combined felony charges? He's being prosecuted on 14 separate felony counts. Based on the volume of irrefutable evidence and the high-level military corruption exposed during the investigation, federal prosecutors are seeking a minimum sentence of 12 years in a federal penitentiary with no eligibility for early parole for the first decade of his incarceration. Multiple character witness statements from former military colleagues who witnessed Ethan's pattern of manipulative and dishonest behavior have been submitted to strengthen the prosecution's case considerably. A quiet, bittersweet sense of justice settled deep within my chest. I didn't crave cruel, vengeful suffering for Ethan, nor did I wish to spend the rest of my days consumed by bitter hatred toward the man who had destroyed so many years of my youth. I simply longed for accountability, for the world to recognize the countless lies he'd constructed to climb the military ranks, and for every innocent person he'd manipulated and betrayed to finally receive closure. 3 weeks following the military court-martial that had cleared my name, my phone rang one evening as I was preparing Leo's favorite vegetable pasta dinner in our small kitchen. The unfamiliar number flashing across my phone screen belonged to no one other than Ethan Carter himself, calling from a secured federal detention facility where he awaited his formal sentencing hearing. I hesitated for only a brief moment before answering the call, curious to hear what final desperate plea the once arrogant military officer intended to deliver from behind bars. Clara. Ethan's voice sounded rough, exhausted, and stripped of every trace of his former authoritative military confidence. Gone was the cold, calculating tone he'd used to threaten me inside the courtroom. In its place remained only raw, desperate regret and crushing defeat. I know I have absolutely no right to ask anything of you after every terrible thing I have done to destroy your life, but I beg you to grant me one short in-person meeting before my official sentencing date arrives next month. Please. I leaned back against our kitchen counter, crossing my arms loosely over my chest as I responded in a calm, unwavering tone. We have nothing left to discuss, Ethan. Every lie you fabricated, every crime you committed, every moment of cruelty you inflicted on me and my child has been fully exposed to the legal system. You will face the consequences of your own reckless ambition, and I have no desire to revisit the trauma you forced me to endure. I only need to speak with you about the fatal car accident that claimed the lives of your parents 3 years ago, he rushed to explain, desperation thickening every syllable of his speech. There are critical details surrounding their collision that were never included in the official police accident report, details only I know the full truth about. If you refuse to meet with me, you may never uncover exactly what happened to the two people who loved you more than anyone else in this entire world. My blood ran cold at his carefully chosen words. My mother and father had lost their lives in a sudden highway collision 3 years prior, just a few short weeks following my return from that fateful out-of-state training program where Ethan had secretly drugged my daily vitamins and orchestrated the conception and subsequent secret adoption of our son Leo. Local law enforcement had ruled the accident a tragic, unavoidable highway collision caused by sudden wet pavement and a distracted commercial truck driver. Yet a faint, lingering sense of unease had haunted me ever since their sudden, unexpected passing. If Ethan held hidden information surrounding their fatal crash, I needed to hear every single detail directly from his own lips. I will agree to one supervised meeting inside the visitation room of your detention facility tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, I agreed firmly. No private conversations, no unsupervised interaction, and every word exchanged between us will be recorded on my personal mobile device for legal protection. If you attempt to manipulate, threaten, or deceive me during our meeting, I will terminate the conversation immediately and submit the recorded audio as additional character evidence during your sentencing hearing. Ethan readily accepted my strict terms, his desperate desire to confess his final secret overriding any remaining impulse to manipulate or lie his way out of accountability. After ending the phone call, I immediately dialed Owen's cell phone to inform him of Ethan's unexpected request for a supervised visitation meeting, asking if he would accompany me to the Federal Detention Center to ensure my safety throughout our difficult conversation. Owen agreed without a single moment of hesitation, rearranging his own personal schedule to stand beside me as I confronted the final painful secret of my past. The following afternoon, we arrived at the high-security federal detention facility precisely at our scheduled visitation time. After passing through multiple security checkpoints and surrendering our personal belongings for temporary holding, we were escorted into a small, sterile glass-partitioned visitation room fitted with official audio recording equipment mounted along the wall beside our metal table. Minutes later, Ethan was led into the opposite side of the glass divider, his once sharp military features now gaunt and haggard from weeks of confinement, his neatly trimmed military haircut replaced with a short, shapeless prison buzz cut. He stared at me through the thick protective glass for several long, silent seconds before speaking, his voice trembling with uncharacteristic shame and remorse. "Your parents never approved of my military career ambitions from the very first day I began dating you. They warned you repeatedly that my hunger for power would eventually overshadow every promise of loyalty I had ever made to you. When General Harrison offered me the opportunity to marry Lila in exchange for a rapid series of military promotions, your parents threatened to submit a formal corruption complaint to the Department of Defense, threatening to expose every under-the-table bribe I had accepted to secure favorable base assignments over the years." Ethan paused, wiping a shaky hand across his sunken forehead as he confessed his final unforgivable crime. "I tampered with the brake lines of their family sedan the evening before they planned to drive to the Regional Military Oversight Office to file their official corruption complaint against me. I never intended for the collision to turn fatal. I only hoped to delay their travel long enough to finalize my fraudulent divorce paperwork and secure my engagement to Lila before their allegations could destroy my military future." The sudden heavy rainfall that evening amplified the mechanical failure I had engineered, leading to the fatal highway crash that stole both of their lives. Tears blurred my vision as I listened to his cold, calculated confession, every carefully spoken word confirming my deepest, most terrifying suspicion that my parents' tragic accident had never been a random, unavoidable tragedy. I pressed the record button on my mobile phone securely tucked inside my jacket pocket, capturing every syllable of his voluntary admission as evidence for federal prosecutors to add to his already lengthy list of felony charges. "I have spent every single night since their fatal crash trapped inside a cycle of crippling guilt," Ethan continued, his shoulders slumping forward in abject defeat. "I watched you grieve their loss alone for months, holding you in my arms as you sobbed through countless sleepless nights, fully aware that I was the man responsible for robbing you of your only remaining immediate family. I hoped that if I eliminated every barrier standing between me and my military advancement, I could bury my guilt beneath wealth, status, and power forever. Instead, every dishonest choice I made slowly unraveled until every secret I had spent years hiding finally collapsed around me." I spoke slowly and deliberately, my voice steady despite the crushing grief weighing heavy on my heart. "You will answer for their murders alongside every other felony you have committed. There will be no plea bargain, no reduced sentencing, no chance for early release to atone for the 2 innocent lives you deliberately destroyed to protect your own greedy ambitions. My parents deserve justice, and I will ensure the legal system delivers every ounce of accountability you have spent years evading." After concluding our difficult visitation meeting, I submitted the recorded confession to our federal prosecution team, adding 2 additional counts of vehicular homicide to Ethan's growing list of felony offenses. When his formal sentencing hearing arrived 2 months later, the presiding federal judge handed down a combined sentence of 24 years of federal incarceration with no possibility of parole for the first 15 years of his prison term. As court deputies led Ethan away to begin his lengthy sentence, he locked eyes with me one final time through the courtroom crowd, offering a quiet, wordless gesture of remorse that I chose not to acknowledge. In the months following Ethan's sentencing, Owen submitted his official voluntary military discharge paperwork, choosing to walk away from the career he had dedicated more than 15 years of his life to pursuing. He purchased a small commercial office space in downtown Raleigh and opened a private security consulting firm, leveraging his decades of Special Forces tactical training to offer risk assessment and personal protection services to regional businesses and private clients across the state of North Carolina. Our quiet friendship slowly blossomed into gentle, patient romance as we continued to navigate the healing process alongside one another. Owen never rushed me into emotional commitments or pressured me for declarations I wasn't ready to make, instead allowing our bond to grow naturally through shared mornings spent caring for Leo, quiet weekend adventures exploring local state parks and hiking trails, and late-night conversations unpacking the trauma we had both endured at Ethan's manipulative hands. On a warm autumn evening beneath a sky dotted with soft golden sunset hues, Owen knelt down beside me on our apartment backyard patio, pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and asked if I would grant him the honor of building a lifelong family with Leo and me. I accepted his heartfelt proposal without hesitation, tears of joy streaming down my cheeks, grateful beyond words to have finally found a partner who valued respect, empathy, and integrity above personal ambition or social status. We held an intimate, small wedding ceremony inside a quiet rural chapel surrounded by a handful of close friends, with our 4-year-old son Leo standing proudly beside us as our ring bearer, his small chest puffed out with importance as he carried the rings down the aisle on a tiny satin pillow. 6 months following our wedding day, I gave birth to our daughter Owen in a peaceful hospital room with Owen holding my hand and Leo waiting excitedly in the hallway with Owen's brother Arthur. She was a soft, sweet little girl with Owen's warm hazel eyes and my own dark curly hair, and the moment I held her in my arms, I felt a completeness I hadn't known was possible. Our small, loving family felt like the perfect, peaceful blessing I had spent so many painful years dreaming of during those long, dark nights alone. Leo thrived throughout his elementary school years, developing a passionate talent for creative painting and storytelling. He would spend hours at the kitchen table with his watercolor set, creating colorful family portraits depicting our weekend adventures and quiet evenings spent gathered around our dining room table sharing home-cooked meals. Each year on the anniversary of my parents' passing, our small family would travel to their rural hometown cemetery to lay fresh wildflowers across their headstones, allowing me to speak openly about the love I still held for them and the peace I had finally found after years of trauma and grief. On one crisp autumn afternoon when Leo turned 8 years old, we sat together beneath a sprawling oak tree in the cemetery's quiet memorial garden after visiting my parents' graves. The leaves were turning gold and crimson, drifting down around us like confetti. Leo squeezed my hand gently as he glanced up toward the bright blue sky dotted with wispy white clouds. Grandma and Grandpa must be the brightest stars shining above our house every night, right, Mommy? They watch over us to make sure we stay safe and happy. I wrapped one arm around his small shoulders, nodding slowly as warm tears pricked the corners of my eyes. They have always watched over us, my sweet boy. They guided me through every dark, lonely moment when I believed all hope was lost, leading me toward the people who would help me rebuild a life filled with love, safety, and genuine happiness. Owen slipped his arm tenderly around my waist, pressing a soft, reassuring kiss to my temple as our young daughter Owen dozed peacefully inside her stroller beside us. We stood together as a complete, whole family, finally free from the shadow of Ethan's ruthless betrayal and endless lies, grateful for the second chance at joy fate had granted each of us after years of unimaginable suffering. As we turned to walk back toward our family vehicle, the warm golden sunlight filtered through the oak tree's sprawling branches, casting soft dappled shadows across the quiet cemetery pathway. I glanced backward one final time toward my parents' weathered headstones, whispering a silent promise that I would spend every remaining day of my life cherishing the loving family they had spent their final years hoping I would one day build. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the wrongful accusations and stolen moments of motherhood had finally faded into distant memory. What remained was quiet, enduring happiness. The kind I had always deserved.